Welcome to Quit, Build, and Mature. Hope you're having a great day. And on this Tuesday, I want to share a word of encouragement with you. And we're going to begin in 2 Kings 19. That's the basis of our story. So in 2 Kings chapter 19, a huge army waited right outside the city of Jerusalem. The oppressors shouted, "Give up! No one can save you now." But King Hezekiah of Judah, he knew better. Now, the Assyrian aggressor shouted, "Hezekiah might say that your God will save you, but we have taken over lots of nations. Did their gods ever save them?" And the answer was no, because they were defeated. Hezekiah was a godly king. He trusted God, and he always tried to do the right thing for the kingdom of Judah. But after being king for 14 years, another king, a foreign king, wanted more land, more power. So that king sent armies to conquer all the nations around him, including the kingdom of Judah. And that power-hungry king was Sennacherib of Assyria. Now, Assyria was already bigger and stronger than the other kingdoms around. So the surrounding kingdoms fought back, but it was no use. Assyria always won the battles. So Assyria's armies took over the cities of Judah one by one. They just kept falling one after the other. Then they went to Jerusalem, where Hezekiah lived. And the Assyrian king's chief of staff tried to intimidate the residents of Jerusalem. He thought that if they were scared, they might give up and surrender and just quit. So Hezekiah and the Jews were very fearful, but they tried to hide it. They tried to act like they were brave and courageous. So Hezekiah sent 3 of his most trusted officials to talk to Sennacherib's chief of staff. And some of the people of Jerusalem watched and listened from the wall. So the royal spokesman, the chief of staff of Sennacherib, looked around at all the people, and he spoke loudly so all the people could hear him. And this is what he said: "You talk tough, but it sure does not look like you're ready for war. Who do you expect to save you? You think Egypt will save you? Egypt cannot be trusted. Or will you say, 'We trust in the Lord our God. Your God wants me to defeat you'? Say we gave you 2,000 horses. You couldn't even find enough men to ride them into battle. You still would not have a chance if we gave you 2,000 horses." Then the king's chief of staff told them that his message was not just for King Hezekiah. He said, "Don't listen to Hezekiah. The king of Assyria says, 'Make peace with me and come out to me, and I will take you away to a land that is just as good as this.'" Well, here's the fact. The Assyrians, after they conquered people, they took their land away. And they made the conquered people start over in a new land, in a new place. So the king's chief of staff, by lying, tried to make this sound like a great deal, that they were giving them a wonderful gift. Well, Sennacherib's chief of staff continued, "Hezekiah might say that your God will save you, but we have conquered many nations, and their gods never saved them. But here's the thing, here's the caveat. The other nations prayed to man-made idols, not the true God." Because here's the fact, idols cannot save anyone. And the officials of Jerusalem gave no answer. Hezekiah had told them, "Don't answer the chief of staff." So they went back, Hezekiah's representatives, they went back into the city, and in grief, they tore their clothing, and they told King Hezekiah what Sennacherib's chief of staff had said. Well, King Hezekiah then also tore his clothing, because he knew that by himself, only the human power of Judah, there was no way that they could win. Hezekiah knew that as a nation, they needed to pray. So he sent his trusted officials to the prophet Isaiah, and they asked Isaiah to pray for help. Well, God heard, and God answered. So Isaiah told them what God said. And these were God's words to Hezekiah and Judah through Isaiah. Do not be afraid of the words that you heard. Oh, the servants of Assyria's king had blasphemed. They had insulted the name of God. So God promised to protect Jerusalem. And he said that Sennacherib would go back to Assyria and he would be killed there. Oh, when Sennacherib realized they did not give up and they would not give up, he then sent a letter to Hezekiah and said something like this: don't let your God fool you. Jerusalem will not be safe. Think of all the nations Assyria has destroyed. Have their gods saved them? And what do you think happened to their kings? Well, Hezekiah took the letter to the temple. And in the temple, he unrolled the scroll, the letter, and he showed God what the letter said. And then he said, you are God, you alone. You made heaven and earth. See how Sennacherib insults you? It is true that the kings of Assyria have destroyed many lands and their gods. That was because they were not real gods. People made them out of wood and stone. So, God, save us from Sennacherib, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you are the Lord, you alone. See, Hezekiah understood that this was not about him as the king. The Assyrians and the other nations did not know the right way to live. They did not know God. So God wanted to teach these people. He wanted them to learn that he, the true God, can protect and he can punish. That God has total control. So God heard Hezekiah, and he sent Isaiah the prophet to tell him his answer. And God promised that he would save the remaining people of Judah. And God said this about the king of Assyria: he shall not come into this city. He will not shoot a single arrow here. He will not trap the people inside. He will go back the way he came. The next morning, the Assyrian camp was filled with dead soldiers. God had sent an angel to kill 185,000 Assyrians. And Sennacherib, after he saw that, he chose to leave Jerusalem and go home because he had never encountered the power of a God like that. But God, as God had said, Sennacherib was not safe in Jerusalem or Judah. So he went back home, Sennacherib did, and his own sons killed him as he bowed down to an idol of a false god. And God answered Hezekiah's prayer, and the people of Jerusalem were saved from the scourge of Assyria. I want us to go to the New Testament because there are so many principles in this narrative. But in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 through 10, this is what the Apostle Paul wrote to Jesus' covenant disciples who gathered in the city of Corinth. But he said to me, this is Paul speaking of God saying to him, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is perfected in your weakness. Therefore, I will most gladly boast all the more about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may reside in me. So, I take pleasure in my weaknesses, my insults, my hardships, my persecutions, and in my difficulties, for the sake of Christ. For I now realize that when I am weak, that is when I am strong. I encourage you today, based on the narrative in Kings and the message from 2 Corinthians 12, I encourage you to remember, in your times of trouble, first turn to God. Don't turn to the trouble and panic. Turn to God. And don't look around and try to find allies of human source that you can rely on. That's not going to work either. You need to first turn to God, whatever the difficulty or trouble is. And once you turn to God, you need to learn how to rely on His strength and stop relying on the efforts of frail humans. Our God is our only answer. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for sharing a few moments with me here. May God continue to bless us as we continue to strive to follow Him on the path that Jesus showed us. Take care.